Well, the other thing about that is my understanding is you can't defame the dead. So therefore, if you are, it sounds like we've just gone live. Looking at Jace, we're live. We're live. We've been talking.
We can't defame the dead.
Yeah, that's a good way to start, isn't it? Hi, Emily Duncan.
Hi, Pat.
Playwright,
Thanks for having me.
all-round extraordinary person joining us in the podcast.
I made it up the stairs.
Yeah, just third floor here at Petri Dish. We were just talking before we went on air about who owns stories, and you talked about what was his surname? Greg
King, who was a criminal barrister.
Yep.
And
passed away quite young. Was he in his 40s?
I assume so.
Yeah, it was quite young, wasn't it?
And as I understand it, it was suicide.
Yeah.
And I know we may want to be careful going into that, discussing that territory. But I saw somewhere in the media in the past few days, as I understand it, there's a docudrama being made about his life. Yeah. And
so we were just saying, who owns that story? His children will see it. His friends and family will see it. And the point that I just sort of made was, and you can't defame the dead, which means it could be a total load of BS, and there's nothing that then they could do about it other than, make it knowledgeable that this is a total bunch of BS. But it's a really interesting topic at the moment, this who owns stories, because then you talk about something of the last, let's say, 3 to 10 years, which has been quite a big point of contention for people with cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
I remember, what was, Jace, you might know this, the name of, I can see him, I just can't catch his name. There was a comedy series out in the last 3 or 4 years where the lead character was transgender, but the actor was not.
Oh, Transparent?
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
And he
Jeffrey Tambor.
Tambor, that's it. Yeah, Tambor.
Transparent, yeah.
And he won whatever it was, Emmys for that kind of stuff. And then after about the second or third series, there was an uproar that how can a person who's not transgender play a transgender person? So who can tell that story? And that then stopped actually that production being made as well.
Right. I think it's going forward for a final season, but without him, because there've been allegations made around.
Oh well, that's the other thing.
His behaviour. Yeah.
But this seems to happen a lot, and I wonder about that as well. I wonder what stories can we tell. Do we get to a point? And I'm thinking maybe more film, because maybe in writing you can speak to this. Maybe in playwrights, you kind of maybe have a picture in your head of who this character may be, and they would probably be, if you were writing about a Māori character, probably in your head they look and feel and sound Māori, but that person could then be played by a Asian person on screen if that was the interpretation.
Well, that's the sort of the uproar that's happening at the moment with the new Little Mermaid that's happening.
Oh yeah,
yeah, with the
because she's not red-haired, blonde and white
and stuff. But.
Right. I mean, we also, Jason will know this from film, we're working collaboratively often. So, the writer can work in their lane, and then it's always a movable feast how much they may be involved, say in the casting, for example, or
how many plays have you written?
How many?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't.
Couple of dozen more?
Oh no, we're probably looking a dozen.
Shall I tell you? I've got your bio.
No, but they won't have all of them though. That will,
the ones that are for sale.
Yeah.
It'd be like asking a musician how many songs they've written, because there'll be songs they've got in a notebook somewhere that's never been seen the light of day.
I have a lot of notebooks lying around. With
have you ever taken offence? Have you ever been kind of like, hang on, when you've seen someone else doing one of your works, interpreting it completely differently to how you saw it? Or do you go, this is for them to interpret, I'll let them go for it?
I've seen interpretations of parts of my plays where it's maybe not how I may have done it. I wouldn't say taken offence. This is part of the risk you take with writing, and as you become a more experienced playwright, being able to shore up a script that you're happy to hand over.
When you say not how you would have done it, you're meaning if you had have directed it, that's not what it would have looked like? Or do you mean that's not how I wrote it?
In this particular production, and I on the whole, I was really happy with the production. I think they made really bold choices. I would say maybe the stage directions as I had written them had been interpreted slightly differently at the end,
right?
Which sends a different message.
So is that frustrating to you, or do you just kind of go, "Oh, it's a bit interesting"?
I think I sound like I'm beating around the bush. At the time, I was a bit taken aback,
right?
Because it was quite a different intention, because it was a very strong ending,
right?
But I also felt I could acknowledge the strong choices that the director had made, and I would say that in principle to anyone working creatively: own your choices and your intentions as much as you can, but also coming back to Who Owns Stories, keep the dialogue open with people around what you're wanting to do, and also you can't please or serve everyone.
Yeah, of course.
Someone is always going to be offended.
If they had have written it like true to the directions you wrote in it, then maybe someone in the audience would have gone, "Oh, I wish I had taken this direction."
Absolutely, yeah.
Just so people know, if you hear a little bit of noise in the background, we've got
There's a man on the roof.
On the roof doing some alterations and stuff. So if you hear any clunking and donking in the background, that's what it is. In that moment where you saw the ending of the play, obviously you're in the audience, and then of course normally when those situations having been on stage at the end of it, the director might say, and the author is here today, and thank you, and a big round of applause for. And that happened at the end where you're kind of like,
it wasn't that sort of setting.
Right.
I also felt, that play was a commission.
Right.
And it was very much in that process that I wrote the play and I workshopped it with some young actors, and it was handed over. So, and I was absolutely fine with the understanding of that. And at that point, I think it becomes less about me as the writer, and it's about the production team and the actors.
So,
and they were
but
a young cast.
As a writer, when you do a commissioned piece, is that more than, for example, supplying a client a product that they ask for? Like, is it a less creative product, or is it still all creative, all off your back?
I think it's still a creative. You're working creatively, maybe within what they're after.
Yeah.
But part of, there's often various stages to a commission, and they have an agent, and you work with them going forwards about how you're going to tackle it.
I hear the word commission though, and I think if I was to commission, let's say, a piece of art, I'd probably say to the artist, "This is what I want."
Right.
That sounds like a more restrictive form, rather than just saying to an artist, "Here's $1,000, create me something." It's
right. If I want a family portrait with my children,
that's giving. I think it's almost speaking from a purely creative point of view. I think going, "Here's $1,000, create something," is far more scary than say, "Here's what we need. These are the parameters," and then the creative mind goes, "Great, some parameters to work within." I can be more creative because I have to, I can push on that parameter and I can really work within that one. And you have a point to start from, so it's not so much you don't sit down and go, what do I do? I don't know. I can do anything. What can I do? Yeah,
there's definitely benefits to limitations and restrictions. I think that pushes you to think creatively. The commissions I've done, usually there's a process in terms of, first of all, you submit an idea. You give them an idea of what the project is, as opposed to them saying, "Hey, in 6 months, come up with an amazing piece of work," and then you go away and sweat it because you don't know what their idea of an amazing piece of work is.
Right.
Yeah. So
it sounds like basically what you're saying is there's no reduction in creativity to a commission for you.
I haven't felt that way, no.
Still thinking about the idea of Who Owns Stories, I'm fascinated as well by there seems to be a culture, maybe it's more in America than here at the moment, along the lines of who can tell what stories. I have quite a lot of involvement with comedians in New Zealand, and I spend a lot of time following and watching comedians in America and listening to their podcasts and that kind of thing. And I saw one just the other day. I can't remember who it was, so there's pointless that me tell the story, but about a comedian who went to a college, a young guy, who the organisers of the college came out and stopped his set, his set, even though the audience was liking it, and they basically said to him, "We don't know if you've got the right to tell that joke about that story, because you're not the ethnicity of the joke subject matter." To which he said, it was about the joke was something like, and I'm, if this offends anyone, I apologise, but just to give context, about how he knew that homosexuality was real, because there's black gay people, and why would you pick two things to be ostracised by? So that was the basis of the joke,
right?
And he wasn't black.
Okay.
And then he got challenged on stage by this and asked and said it was time to finish. To which he said, he had a very close friend who was a black gay man, and he gave him the joke. So he actually was the person who gave him the joke, and then he used it. In other words, it's almost like he's been commissioned.
Okay, yeah. And then he was still shut.
But the idea of who can tell stories, who can make jokes, who can, portray art, and how, like if someone, you see it sometimes, cultural appropriation of Māori artwork. There was that businesswoman who had a taumoko and inappropriate and not okay. And where is the line of we're being a bit sensitive, and where is the line of you probably shouldn't wear taumoko if you're not Māori?
Well, it's certainly not my place to place any lines, and I don't have any black and white answers. But I do think, a lot of it goes back to maybe intention and having dialogue.
Do you ever think about when you are writing a character? Mm-hmm. So Eloise, for example, yes. my 15-year-old was very excited I was talking to you because she saw Eloise last year.
Fabulous.
7-year-old girl.
Yes.
Based on your experiences, a made-up person, could one therefore say, "You're not a 7-year-old girl. How can you be writing the story?"
Well, we were all children once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Hopefully we can keep having these conversations about it as well. What's the alternative? Censorship?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think there's to me it feels like, and this kind of conversation has come up in previous podcasts, that there is a current transition in our language. And some of the conversations we have, it feels like maybe there aren't the words or the ideas to fully express answers to them yet, but we're in that transitional period at the moment. Because, what is censorship to one person is free speech to another. Mm-hmm. And who gets the right to shut down a conversation or an idea or a storyline or a cultural appropriation. And I just think about in America, for example, they talk about there's a couple of sports teams. There's one football team called the Redskins, and it's the most offensive name to a whole lot of Native Americans. Mm-hmm. Yet, what am I wearing? Am I wearing New York today? I'm probably wearing New York today.
Okay.
LA. Dodgers. Yeah. Okay. Or I've got another Cleveland Indians cap. Yeah. But my understanding is Indians is seen as a fairly offensive word to many people because Native Americans. But the team has made a relationship with the local the indigenous people, and they've kind of signed off on it. Right. So offensive word for one team for some, but they've got sort of the check mark by the indigenous people, offensive word for another one. Majority of the population seems to be against that word.
We're having the same sort of thing at the moment in New Zealand, aren't we?
The Crusaders. Yeah.
So. Yeah, and look, I had always, and I don't follow rugby.
Hey, look at that, we're talking about sport.
You had to shoot on that somehow.
But it was, as long as I'd known about the name of the Crusaders, thought, why the hell is there a rugby team called the Crusaders? And then there are other people who legitimately have the reaction you had just now. They don't see the issue.
The thing is, if you Google my name, you'll see that I've been involved with, the religious fraternity a lot
Right.
in the last 20 years. So I'm fully aware of what the term Crusader means. And also, if you probably Google my name, you'll see that most people consider me a screaming left-wing liberal. So I also understand the sensitivity around that name when it comes to especially the Muslim community. But I didn't really put the two and two together. I guess, I don't know. I mean, maybe that shows a weakness in me or a obliviousness in me. But I thought, I never stopped and thought, well, surely no one will find this offensive. I never even had the conversation.
Sure, and if it doesn't, and I'm also wary of using this word, if it doesn't trigger anything in you, you don't know to have the conversation. And I think this is where theatre can have an important role, is that it has that means to open up conversations where we can truly empathise with people, and we can, or like this setting, and I can say, I was never really cool with this idea of a sports team called the Crusaders, and you can say where you come from, as opposed to us shutting each other down and saying you're ridiculous, but we can talk it out a bit.
One of the things we really are going to try to achieve in this is
today,
only today, is to have all sorts of ideas and stuff come through, and all sorts of opinions. And I'm not one of these people who will have on board only people I agree with. Because how boring would that make the world?
Exactly.
How boring.
And I often say so some of the work I do is as a dramaturg, which is essentially a script advisor. I assist other playwrights or support them in creating their own works.
Is that in your role at the university officially?
No,
or
it's just some of the work I do.
Okay.
And I love doing it. It's a constructive way to support other writers. But one thing I say to them is try to get to the truth of your characters. Don't feel that you as a writer need to apologise for your characters. They are not necessarily, they are not you.
Yeah.
Well, there's always, aspects of you and, everything you do.
Yeah.
But if we really want to show the truth of your character's world, we can't hold back.
Yeah.
We can't just have likeable characters. I don't watch Scarface to like Al Pacino's character. There's a certain crazy admiration, but that's and that can be an uncomfortable space for writers and actors. Yeah. Because there's part of all of us. Love me,
totally.
Like me.
Yeah.
It can take you into an uncomfortable space, but hopefully you have the right supports around people. But also hopefully in a setting such as theatre or conversations like this, if you find ways to maybe move into that slightly discomforting space, we can actually get some empathetic traction as opposed to just shutting each other down. Why does something make us uncomfortable, really?
I was having this conversation with my wife the other day about using another form of media, TV, and Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Well, no, they just call it Queer Eye, with it being rebooted, and how they've got the new Fab Five, and we're talking about the very, very first season coming out. Literally coming out, was these five gay guys, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, coming out making over guys, and it was very much. I can't remember the phrasing I used, but basically it was. They were, the point of the show wasn't just to give guys makeovers and make them feel better. It was about introducing a secular world, introducing a potentially still quite homophobic world to the gay LGBTI world,
right?
And and in a way, trying to use the right words without offending, but kind of show people they're just regular people. They're regular dudes. They may have better fashion sense, and that was the point of the show. But it was very much introducing the world to, not introducing the world to homosexuality, but in a very mainstream way.
Mainstreaming.
Mainstreaming. That's a good way of phrasing it. Mainstreaming the idea of homosexuality as a normal lifestyle. And
that
then
actually poses no threat.
Yeah, exactly.
To you.
And then I was saying that what's great about the new season is that they've done that. The first Fab Five did that. And they were part of the battle. You know, you can look at people like Ellen DeGeneres as well. They were part of the LGBTI battle to mainstream that lifestyle and get people understanding it, accepting it, that sort of thing. And then these guys are much more. I don't know if you guys have watched it at all, but the new Fab Five are much more. We're here, we're queer, get used to it. But they're also very much not in a sort of really open sort of hero parade, sort of wearing leather chaps and that sort of thing, and that really cliche sort of. They're very much. They're just regular guys. There's a guy who's just without using cliches, you look at them and apart from a couple of them, you wouldn't have a clue. Whereas the first ones are a little bit more like that. And it's pushing, I use inverted quotes, the gay agenda, but mainstreaming it even more so and going even further into that and actually going right now that we've mainstreamed it, let's get to some of these real rooted ideas that are still against it and try and combat it. And so often they're going into sort of Bible Belt and talking to people that they would have never done in the first season.
Yeah, this reminds me of almost 20 years ago in London, at the Rada Summer School. But a friend of mine who was on the course with me, she was from the Bible Belt part of the States.
Right.
And the film version of, what's it called, The Birdcage?
Yep.
Yeah, that came out.
Yep.
And she said, I'm off to see this.
With Hank Azaria. It's a great character.
Yeah. And I said, that came out months ago in the States. Did you not see it then? And she said, no, I live in the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Right.
We don't, it's not
They
playing in our movie theatres.
Yikes.
And it's like, you don't know what you don't know. And yeah,
that's fascinating.
It wasn't coming to a town near her.
It is interesting. I used to know of a group of young people who were associated with the church in East Auckland, and they used to put out actively a do not watch list of movies. So they'd hand their young people, their teenagers, these are the movies that you shouldn't watch because, it'll send you to hell or whatever it was.
Right.
And so, of course, that weekend, what were the first movies that all of those kids went and watched? Were the ones that their so-called elders or whatever the correct terminology was said do not watch.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any? I'm not being familiar with your work. Sorry. Do you have any? Are there any controversial topics you cover? Like, have you had any people go, you shouldn't be writing about this. This is not a topic for young kids to be watching, or jowl shaking sort of stuff.
I have done, yeah, and it probably comes back to the characters. I mean, people can find the stuff online. Yeah, and it's it's part of the field we work in that. A reviewer's interpretation of your work, and they don't necessarily, they're not aware of the conversations or what went on in the actual production.
And then often you get that outrage from the review as opposed to from the actual people who've never seen the work or heard the work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So here's the yardstick in New Zealand. Has Family First ever complained about you?
No.
Oh, there you go. You've got ways to go yet. You've got a ways to go yet.
Today's news is tomorrow's fish and chip, baby. Everyone's madly Googling now. But, and it's,
So what are the kind of characters that cause controversy? I mean, the one that often comes out is, for example, suicide and teenagers, that sort of thing isn't often, if that's in a YA book, a young adult's book, then often that's like, should we be putting this in front of our kids? What are the kind of traits or characters that have been more controversial for you?
Right. So this particular play, it was actually, it was a commission, and it was the genesis or the idea of the play came from Jeremy Kyle's show.
Oh, yeah. And so for those that don't know, that's like, what was his name? Jerry Springer, but on steroids.
And it's this povsploitation type.
Yeah. Which has now been
genre.
cancelled because someone killed himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is, it should have been cancelled years ago. And that was my driver for writing this piece, as I thought it's so exploitative. And I was thinking, of all the sort of airtime the likes of Mike Hoskins get, and I was thinking about what if such a show were to happen here, and what would be the divisions that would be created around that.
Yep.
And I had so Pacific Islander characters in the play, and Victor Roger, who was Samoan, was my dramaturg. So that was the background to writing it, and it sparked some reactions.
And what? So I'm assuming, not knowing the work, but that, how dare you portray the Pacific Island community in this light? That sort of thing would be a criticism.
Yes, in a nutshell. And like the irony was, well, actually, that's the point of it. We have this whole industry, like the Jeremy Kyle industry, that millions of people watch, which is so exploitative and reductive and,
Is there, like, I was just thinking, it's a silly example, shows my mentality, but Maui, the movie,
which I haven't seen, but I've heard a little bit about.
That The Rock voiced, not just in New Zealand, but kind of Pacific wide. There was a bit of an outcry about this guy who was kind of a bit dumpy and a bit fat looking on screen, portraying Pacific Islanders as obese sort of people. And I guess what I'm wondering, and the same question for you about your writings, is there a validity in the criticism?
Absolutely.
So even though you've written the piece, and you've chosen
to... Oh, you mean in my piece?
Well, both.
So let's have the... not today, we've done enough. But let's open up. I have to take something from that as the writer. So, okay, this is how some people react. I mean, you just have to when you put stuff in the public domain, or choose, what you're going to do with it. I mean, me as a woman, when I'm watching things on TV or reading, I often look at how female characters are portrayed and what's their role.
Which is the Bechdel test, isn't it?
Alison Bechdel,
The Bechdel test. There's like that you should apply to all screenplays. I think we've actually talked about this before, but it's for your film or play or whatever to pass the Bechdel test. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, it has to have two female characters having a conversation for more than a couple of minutes that's not about a male character. And that if you have that, then you pass the Bechdel test, which basically says you've got it's a starting point for having decent female characters in your film.
Well, but look, I mean, part of me kind of goes, it's a lovely idea, but then doesn't it depend on the content? I'm sure that didn't happen in Saving Private Ryan, because that wasn't the content of the movie. It wasn't about women having a longer than 2 minute voice. It was about 6 or 8 or 11 men trying to go save another man in the middle of a war. So I sometimes hear those sorts of things and I think good intention, but for me it always comes back to what are they trying to achieve? What is the content?
It's not like it's saying if you don't pass this, you won't get funding sort of thing.
I get it. I get it, but there is a lot of times where people say, such and such and such and such isn't represented. It's like, well, maybe this is not a film that involves those people.
Absolutely.
Maybe this is a film about a sector of society where that group of people, male, female, specific ethnicity, tall, short, fat, handicapped in some way, maybe they're not a part of the storyline, because you know what? My storyline today, if I was to write the story of my story today, I don't know because it's not finished yet, but there's probably a very good chance I won't come across a disabled person. So if I was going to write my story of today, at the end of the day, probably there's no disabled people in that story.
Sure, but this comes back to, I entirely agree with you on that, I think. Again, who gets to tell the stories? Who gets through the door in the first place? Who gets to sit around writers' tables? What playwrights get their work on main stages? I have talked in the past about when I was in sixth form, back when we had forms at school, we studied Renee's play Wednesday to Come. Now, wasn't a particularly stupid girl, but before then, I don't think I'd ever had in front of me a book of a play actually published by a woman, let alone a woman in New Zealand.
Wow.
And that was a real light bulb moment, me as a 16-year-old, to think, oh, women can write plays and have them published and put on professionally. It's difficult to emulate what you can't see. Yeah.
So therefore, let's use my silly anecdotal example of my day today.
Mm-hmm.
That would be written by a cisgender white male,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't likely involve any disabled people,
Mm-hmm.
probably no transgender people,
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the story.
Yeah.
Should I, therefore, writing that story, include those characters for today to make it more diverse, to make it more so a transgender child will see it and feel included, or should I speak truth to my day? I know it's a silly example, but I'm working through this.
Yeah. And look, there aren't hard and fast answers.
Yeah.
And I'd say stick to the truth of your day, but also interrogate it. And one comeback I might have for you is, you could say technically you're sitting across a table from someone with a disability, and that I have no pituitary gland anymore. It's been so before I came in here, I have to take steroids 3 times a day because I don't make sufficient, my body doesn't make sufficient cortisol anymore. So you wouldn't know that without me telling you, but that's a way of, I suppose, me saying, look, disabilities aren't all in a wheelchair, or
very true.
Yeah, and you, I don't know if so you were telling me a bit about yourself before we went on air about why you have these spinny ball things.
Because I'm distractible.
Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily have known that about you either.
Well, that's what one of the things we do.
Let's not
have these conversations.
Stereotypes about
Yeah.
What is a disability, or what is any character or person.
What is any illity, with whatever the word, what is any ism, illity, whatever that is.
And Jason was talking earlier about is it just called Queer Eye now? Was it?
Yeah. I think they've because they don't actually necessarily do, because they've done a couple of women, and that sort of thing, and sometimes they even just do communities as well. The new season.
You mean like they fix up houses and stuff?
Yeah, it's almost become a little bit Extreme Makeover House Edition. Because they do that as
Extreme
well.
Makeover Queer Edition.
Queer Edition, but it's become. It's interesting because they actually they go into the stories of the guys a little bit too. Like, one of them is from the Bible Belt and talks about growing up in an evangelical Christian home and coming out, it being like they're singing in the band at church and then coming out as gay and then being like just kicked out of home basically.
Okay.
And so he comes and they talk about their stories and he talks to these people and they're like, he's talking to these straight people who are a little bit homophobic or have misconceptions, and like help them to work through their misconceptions through having these great conversations. So, I've never met and actually had a proper conversation with a homosexual person before. You've really opened my eyes.
Yeah.
And it's all just about, we need to love each other, and it's good stuff.
So,
and
so
that's
they're
through a
all
TV
from
show.
the different backgrounds.
Very different. One's from Chicago. He's a big black guy. He's got the great fade going on, and they're all very, very different guys. And there's one guy who's just like super flamboyant, wears dresses. He's fantastic. Okay. In all senses of the word.
Don't you mean he's fantastic?
Because he does that exact sort of stuff all the time. But he's awesome because he's so great because he's just totally unapologetic about who he is as a person. Okay. He totally knows himself.
But they do. But that's he feels the choice to do that. I'm thinking of Hannah Gadsby's Nanette.
Yeah.
And she talks about my people and how she's not really a pride parade person. Her favourite sound is the sound of a teacup on a saucer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way we also put that out there, she doesn't get on a float necessarily. She just.
Yeah. I think people can. It's a great onus once you're identified of being whoever. and how, what you might be expected to represent whatever or whoever.
Kind of, for some reason, talking more about the LGBTI community than anything else, but I was having the conversation the other day about the Hero Parade and how a lot of people were pulling their support and funding from it through some of the controversy about frontline police officers. But I also kind of ended up having the conversation with somebody about whether the Hero Parade's even needed anymore, because when it first came out, it was about saying, we're here, we're queer, get used to it. This is us, we're celebrating who we are, we have our identity. And it's just kind of like, I could be really naive as this male guy, but I feel like we're in a much better place now. And it's almost like we don't need to celebrate it because it's such a mainstream thing. But that's not our call
to make.
Exactly, it's not our
call
to make.
And
the people behind it are almost actually making the call themselves. But it's kind of like, to me, I feel like they've kind of, for me, in my life, I feel like that my opinions about the LGBTI community have come a long way from when I was a teenager because of those sorts of movements, and so it's great.
I think also, just like on the absolute overly simplistic, why would you turn down the chance for a big party once a year in the weekend? Honestly,
because you might be really introverted. It's not your thing.
It's a little bit like when you just said then it's not our call to make. It made me think, for example, and sorry, often it comes back to politics for me. Politics or Disney movies, they're my two area.
Right.
Of the Māori seats. It seems that there are a lot of people who are saying get rid of Māori seats, whereas it seems very clear to me that's for Māori to make that decision. The reason they were put in place and the first time was kind of to disadvantage Māori, and now that it has seemed to be an advantage to Māori, all of a sudden it's time to get rid of them. There's fair representation, so that's for Māori to sort through, not for, let's say, the Axe Party or Winston Peters. God bless him.
Yeah, and what does representation really look like as well?
It is interesting, the whole. I feel like we're still kind of talking about who's. Like right from the start about whose story is it to tell. And I was thinking the other day about, I don't know if I was thinking about the Jeffrey Tambor situation, but I was thinking about how there is a bit of a push in Hollywood at the moment for, authentic people to play those same characters. If you are Native American, you should play. In the past it was terrible. They've got John Wayne. You should definitely Google John Wayne playing an Asian character. John Wayne. Have you seen any of those?
No.
John Wayne played Asian characters with the worst stereotypical accents and those sorts of things to come full circle to where we are now and what we're doing. But I also think, can you then go one step too far? Can you go? Oh, there we go. There's John Wayne as an Asian character, just the worst of every stereotype, and still speaking the same. With the same lilt and accent, and it's gone full circle. I wonder if we went full circle, someone like who's Doogie Howser? What's that actor's name?
Neil Patrick Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris is gay. Mm-hmm. Can he play a straight guy?
Well, he hasn't he?
Well, you look at
but that's what I'm saying. At the moment, there's a
ultra straight guy like Womanizer and How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah. So, but there's this movement at the moment that says, for example, straight guys maybe shouldn't play gay guys, or non-transgender people shouldn't play transgender roles. Or let's say it hasn't really come up, but someone like Cliffy Curtis made a fair bit of his name in Hollywood, playing sort of Arabic terrorist characters. But does that go all the way, and do we follow all the way through and say now, for example, a lesbian can't play a straight woman in a movie? Is that where we've got to?
I hope not.
Well,
I hope we're not setting.
No,
that we're not.
I agree with you, but I guess what I'm saying, if you're drawing the lines in the other place, like if some in Hollywood are, then surely consistency would say. And I don't want to get there either. I think it's silly. I think it's silly that the hard lines are drawn. There might be a reason sometimes to make sure that things are authentically as they were, but it seems to me that theatre, movies, whatever it is in the past, has been a place for interpretation, has been a place, like I remember doing a Carol Churchill play, Cloud 9, when I was at university.
Yeah.
I played a 7-year-old girl.
Yes.
With a full beard.
Yes.
It was actually part of the dynamics of theatre. It's like, we don't have to stick or abide by your societal rules. We will go beyond and outside them. Whereas it feels that maybe there's a bit of a movement at the moment that says, well, now we have to stick by societal rules. And I think that might be sad.
Oh, it would be incredibly sad. And part of that, you know, in terms of like, acting or writing, is again that comes back to the exercise of empathy and understanding or exploring worlds and people that are different from you. But it also seems a lot of this conversation is around maybe casting, and I think there's definitely room to in a lot of places to make more effort around who is cast in particular roles. I'm not saying being prescriptive or such like, but if let's say for example you have a Chinese character, you can find those actors. They are around. Sometimes a bit more effort does need to be made.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think I agree.
Who are you actually, involving in your work and telling the story?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm oversimplistic in this, but I always think about the best person for the job. Maybe that might sound a little bit sort of libertarian.
Okay, well then I'll come. Okay, so if we talk about and also it goes back to who is given the opportunities
and
coming up,
and who decides who's the best,
and what sort of say biases or whatever have affected their appointments as they, make themselves up to being the best for the job. And we know enough now, especially around job interviews and or auditioning or wherever, that we'll have cognitive biases. And if someone fits the role way to look the best and they're going to keep rising up, they're going to be the best person for that job because of that. And I think sometimes it comes back to who do we let through the door in the first place. Maybe think a bit more laterally around who is the best person.
Exactly,
for the job.
and as I said there about who then gets to decide who's the best, because that's a part of it as well.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's some research out at the moment. Well, not at the moment, but there's research.
And what are the structures? Sorry, but what are the structures they're made to work? Under. Totally. Sometimes you hear, why aren't there more women CEOs? Maybe they don't want to work in that system, or maybe there's no way to shake it up. Or do I have to be quiet?
Careful.
Okay.
No, I'm not. That'll be the last thing I'll be telling you to be quiet after we're talking about women as CEOs, because there's a lot of controversy around that at the moment about the role of male, role of female. Are our brains the same? Are they interchangeable? And it's a
All right.
I think there is research that say in general women, statistically speaking, don't want to have to go through the same things that a CEO would the hours.
And maybe men don't want to either.
I think that the research shows otherwise, but it's a very controversial thing, because what will happen is women will say, I can do anything that a man will do. And that's true. But when you take 10,000 men and 10,000 women, you do get patterns that evolve, that come out through research. And it would appear that women in general aren't as driven as men for those kinds of positions.
And we also like thinking in zero-sum game terms as well. Let's just keep shaking it up and talking about it.
Well,
can I steal one of your tissues?
Yeah. And seeing we're talking about chauvinists and stuff at the moment, because that's what we just
I won't steal your ham and cheese sandwich.
Did you happen to see
your fake news?
Any of the Mueller situation this morning with Mr. Trump?
I heard a bit of it on the radio, the terse exchange. I heard it.
So, are you a fan? Do you follow? I follow American politics actually like theatre.
You're right.
And actually, I find it it's like I watch Fox News, but not as a source of news.
Right.
I watch it as a source of entertainment.
Okay. So I saw, I read, was it Luke Harding's book, Collusion?
Yeah.
And then I also read Michael Wolff's first book, was it Fire and Fury? And I see he's got a new book out. And I think some people consider him a bit of a hack, maybe.
Right.
But I find the backstory to that, how he got to write that book, kind of hilarious. It speaks volumes about the Trump administration, how he sort of got in the door in the first days of the administration. And no one really thought to ask, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And people just opened up to him, and then he's got this sort of tabloidy.
It's like the
train
first
wreck
few
of a book.
days of him being president, that everyone was getting put through the switchboard, and they had like 6 prank phone calls get through to him because they was just saying yes to everybody.
Okay, yeah.
That's like, how did they get through?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everyone assumes once you're there, oh, you must be part of the team, or you're meant to be here.
Mueller was up for about 4 hours today, and it seems that 98% of his testimony was sort of irrelevant.
Okay.
But there was kind of 3 big things to come from it.
Mm-hmm.
And these will be the high, like any news channel for the next kind of 3 days will play these 3 things. And a Republican congressman stupidly asked the question, is there I'm paraphrasing, but is there a case once President Trump is not president that he can get arrested? And Mueller said yes. So that's pretty massive. And the other big thing, there was an exchange between a Democratic congressman and Mueller where basically Mueller said there is no evidence. There's no evidence. We could not come to evidence that there was no collusion. Trump's going, no collusion. And he spelled it out very, very clearly that the report does not clear him of collusion.
Yeah.
So they were the 2 things that really come from it. Have you got some audio there, Jace, or we're just having a look?
Yeah, I don't know what this. I think this is a section of it.
Refused a request to be interviewed by you and
Oh,
your
that
team?
was when the president wouldn't come for a year.
And is it true that you tried for more than a year to secure an interview with the president?
Yes.
And is it true that you and your team advised the president's lawyer that, quote, an interview with the president is vital to our investigation, close
Yes.
quote?
Yes.
And is it true that you also, quote, stated that it is in the interest of the presidency and the public for an interview to take place, close quote?
Yes.
But the president still refused to sit for an interview by you or your team?
True. True.
So not all the way through, I'm innocent. I've done nothing wrong. I've got the best words, which was his greatest comment ever. I've got a big brain and the best words, and
Really stable genius.
Yeah.
He's comedy fodder for there's going to be for every art medium there's going to be there's going to be plays about him, there's going to be films about him, there's going to be which is part of this game. I still think he's actually incredibly smart. I deep down I still think he's actually one of the smartest people on the planet because he's
Jason. I think this is the end of our relationship, Jason.
because he's gaming the system, because he's going to be famous for the rest of his life, and he's going to live in infamy for his.
Let's not overlook that we still have children in cages.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Abortion laws being. It's just.
I don't actually think he's smart, but deep down I'm thinking that the only way he could possibly ever have a shred of humanity or dignity left in him is that he's just actually like the most inhumane person, and he's just gaming the system.
I think he's just a narcissist or a sociopath. It's one. It can be only one of the 2. And people in those areas tend to think that they have the answers, even though they don't. But actually, so I would think the likely scenario is, rather than him being a compulsive liar, is he has narcissistic personality disorder, so he doesn't even know he's lying.
He's the poster child for the Dunning-Kruger effect of how much you think you know versus how much you actually know, that when graphed over time.
Well, I think what'll be interesting is to see how the media disseminates those 2 bits of information. That Robert Mueller was saying there is no evidence. No, I'm saying that wrong. He said that the report did not clear him of collusion. That was the correct way to say it. And that ridiculous Republican congressman who basically got Mueller to say, he would be arrested if he wasn't president. So, duh.
But then, will that actually get back to Trump's support base?
No,
Do they care?
That's what I'm saying. The
because right back
dissemination
before
of
he was elected, do people care how Trump treats women?
It
people who support him do not care.
No, it won't affect the 30% of people on the Trump train. That 30%. I mean, what will come down to is whether the next election is probably the Democrats to lose, but that's what they did last time. If Hillary hadn't have been in, if Bernie had been in, Trump wouldn't have been president. And the Democrats, basically Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC, set up that election to put Hillary Clinton through. And the reason Trump won was because he was facing the most hated, the second most hated, both of them were the most hated candidates there's ever been. If Bernie was there, Trump wouldn't be president. So are the DNC going to do it again? Will they implode? Time will tell. And you know what? The thing about it is everyone was concerned it would be the end of the world. And I think the one thing that's come from this is that America as a as a body, the actual political system seems to have enough checks and balances that he does at the moment have enough restrictions around him that I heard someone say the other day that the worst thing about this, like a commentator, the worst thing about this is what we've done to our allies and how long it will take for us to reform. No. I mean, if it was, I don't know, pick any of the DNC guys next time around, there's a phone call to the UK or there's a phone call to Germany or there's a phone call to Australia and relations get straight back to where they were. I don't believe it's going to be an ongoing 20-year process for America to come back into the fold after Trump.
Or, I'm wary of overlooking the real human cost while all this is going on.
Yeah.
The entertainment.
You can talk about trade deals and stuff until you blue in the face, but the fact is that there's people being put in cages like animals at the border, and lifelong separations, and so they'll be cleaning up that mess for decades.
That kind of thing, yeah, I agree.
And I haven't been following the statistics, but the number of shootings in the States that are. Well,
I think America will feel this for years, because if he loses the next election, of course that 30% will all be it's been stolen from him. It's big government coming back. It's a setup. It's and there's already commentary and commentators saying that he won't go quietly if he goes. So that I think this will be ongoing in America for a long time. But I think the point I was making was people concerned about how America would get back to the rest of the world and come back into the fold, back to the UN, back to the Paris Climate Accord, that kind of stuff. I don't think any of that is going to be a flow on, because that's one phone call. But yeah, it'll be interesting. There is a guy, and we talked about this a couple of podcasts ago, Jace. I forget his name, but the guy who has predicted the correct election outcome since 1984. He's got a series of 7 or 11 questions, and depending on how those questions get answered, he can predict. And
he's not an octopus.
Win. No, he's not an octopus. And he got Trump right as well.
Yeah.
And he has come out in the last couple of months saying if there's not one more significant major... Oh, there he is there. What's his name? I always forget his name. If there's not one more significant major negative against Trump, like, for example, being impeached, according to his calculation, he'll win again in 2020.
Okay.
And he's been right since 84. Like, his prediction model's been right.
Yeah.
So... what does he say?
Yeah,
so they have to impeach him. So he talks about that he has to have one significant negative against him, and he's suggesting that if they don't impeach him, he'll win again. That's what his research says at the moment. So there you go. Welcome to another 4 years of Trump world.
Hey, Pat, can I ask you, you said you have a 15-year-old daughter.
I do.
Who does drama at school.
And my 13-year-olds read musical and drama as well.
So what do you see the place of that in their young lives?
It's interesting, actually, because my 15-year-old is first year NCEA, and so she's starting to talk about university and what she wants to do with her life and that sort of thing. And she wants to, of course, be an actress. That's what she wants to do.
Yep.
And I think in her life right now, drama's amazing. It gives her, I was going to say the courage, but certainly the skills and the confidence to be up on stage in front of people. It gives her the ability to, show a creative side of her that she couldn't show at other times. It's a way she can express herself. And then we get into the other stage of it, which is what next. And that's the conversation we're having at the moment, what next? And I say to her quite a lot, because I went through that. I've got postgrad diploma in drama, and I worked for Theatre Sports Auckland, and I've done stage and screen and all that kind of stuff in an earlier day when I was less grey. And the thing that I'm interested in at the moment, and maybe you could comment on this, is what do you tell your 15-year-old who wants to be an actress and wants to study drama? My progress at the moment, my process of talking it through with her at the moment is go for it. That's always the first thing. Go for it. I study drama. You study drama. It's amazing. But the chances of it supplying you with a livable income for the rest of your life are slim. You know, you look at the number of people who are earning like that in New Zealand at the moment, and it's, you know, very small number of people. And so we're talking about things like totally study a drama, do a 4-year degree, whatever you want to do. Maybe then after that, what you do is you do a year of, get a teaching diploma as well. And then you've got your drama that you can do as much as you can. And if that doesn't turn into a professional career, you can still do it as you want. But you've also got yourself a career that is in that field anyway, and you can continue on with it.
Yeah, I think part of when you, I mean, I wanted to be an actress when I was younger, and I, by different routes, found my way more into playwriting. And I was talking to someone actually yesterday over lunch about this. What were those first sparks of why did I actually want to write plays? And maybe for your 15-year-old at the moment, which thinks I really want to be an actor, and maybe she does, but somehow find the way to keep coming back. Go, what is it really about this field or industry that really excites me or drives me? And one of the great things I often say about doing a theatre studies degree or drama is you get to try out different things. I did my BA up at Vic. If it's still called that today.
It is.
Yeah, it is, okay.
Fellow Vic alum, Victoria University as well. Victoria University of Wellington, Wellington University of Wellington is what it is at the moment or something. Yeah.
And, you know, we had papers where it was more production focused, where everyone had to do a bit of everything in terms of putting a show on. And, you know, that gives people a chance to, actually, I'm really excited about lighting or set design or costume, or, you know, the actors are often the ones out at the front. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on, and these are skilled professions.
It's also, that's true. I remember when I did my postgraduate diploma in drama at Auckland Uni, and part of that was doing all of those things. And, you know, we did everything from you know, whether it was a singing course or the actual parts of a performance to lighting and set design and all that as well. And I think one or two of the people come out of that and moved into the more technical fields as well. So it's there. But I mean, even that though, I mean, again, how many people earn an income off set design in New Zealand? It's not going to be massive. It's not and I'm not trying to be, I've gone from left wing to libertarian to right winger now, where I go, it's not that I'm trying to say, you know, oh, it's a career you're never going to make money out of. But I guess I'm a realist, and I really enjoy having real conversations with my girls. Yeah, I got 3 daughters, and that's what I do. I encourage, and I say go for it, and I say chase your dreams, and I say but consider. Yeah, and something I'd also say, you know, you've got 3 girls, is you know, they might want to ask a question at some point. Say they just want to act. I don't want to say just want to act, because that sounds reductive. And it's not just acting. And I have huge respect for actors. Is also what control or autonomy do they want to have over their career? What work do they want to be part of creating? And say if you're in more of a production role as well, and you look at a lot of those maybe more high profile, successful Hollywood actresses, they're also producers. I think those women who make, like, say, Big Little Lies. Right. They get themselves into a position to create the work they want to create, the stories they want to tell. Yep. So they don't have a lifetime of playing the wife or the girlfriend or the daughter. It's clever. In fact, I noticed the production being filmed in Dunedin at the moment. Pardon me, it's the Hollywood, it's Christmas 1974, Black Christmas or whatever it's called. Okay, yeah. The producer of that was also one of the producers on Black Klansman, so he's now technically an Oscar award-winning producer. Okay. Worked with Spike Lee. Yeah. I don't think he's here in New Zealand. I've done everything I can to try and make a connection with those people for a conversation, but hasn't happened. Pick up the phone. Oh, yes, please. Talk to producers. I mean, I think I've tried. Yeah, that's a field that, sorry, I don't mean to tell you to suck eggs, but producers do. That's an amazing role that I feel not enough people know about. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Also, what you kind of said back at the start about about
That's what it is, yeah. If you want to do anything in the industry, whether it's theatre or whether it's filmmaking or whether it's anything, don't befriend actors, don't befriend directors, don't pretend cinematographers unless you want to do those jobs. Befriend producers. That's my biggest advice sometimes.
Back at this start when you asked me that question, talking about, you know, kind of what's the vibe behind why they want to do something as well. I remember, and this is one of the things that's maybe different about sort of the millennial Gen Z kind of group of people, Gen Z, I guess we'd call them here in New Zealand, wouldn't we? And I think it was Jimmy Carr who got told that by a young person that more and more he's not hearing from people, I want to be a comedian like you. He's hearing, I want to be famous like you. And so it's like being comedian is the desire, fame is the byproduct. It seems that the byproduct for some, for many, I don't know what the correct term would be, is the fame first. And you look at, I guess, the entertainment industry at the moment where people seem to be getting famous, insta-famous or for not doing much.
Yeah, somehow that's a thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually know where to start to explain that to your 15-year-old, because it's a very different world from what I grew up.
Yeah, and I guess that's where your parenting comes in, and it's like me and my 15-year-old especially, because I got 15, 13, 10, and so the 13 and the 10 will be off to bed soon, and it's often me and my 15-year-old sitting up solving the problems of the world, and I try and find that balance of encouraging, supporting, loving, affirming, and challenging with gentle realism as well.
I'm just bringing this up because I always think about this when it's talking about like following a career in the arts. And there's this great little clip from the speech from Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey, and I think it's quite applicable. I think.
Imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear.
I think this could.
So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it. My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old,
Jim Carrey's got a fascinating story though as well. Have you seen the little documentary he's got online? It's about 12 minutes about his painting.
many great lessons from my father.
No.
We won't watch it, Jace, but just bring up there in YouTube, just put in something like Jim Carrey painting studio, and he's a different person from The Mask, and he is that it there maybe? Jim Carrey, I needed colour. Maybe that's it, 6 minutes. And it basically goes through his painting studio. Yep, that's it. Just jump forward and have a look at some of his work.
You can choose.
You know, if you want to know more about Jim Carrey and his creative process, that's a really interesting look at what he does now. That's all his work, you know.
But yeah, what that clip was going on to say was that his dad chose the safe career of being an accountant and then was made redundant and ended up having to flip burgers to be able to pay rent for their family and to support their family. So he failed at the safe option. The safe option failed for him, even though Jim Carrey thought he could have been a great comedian. And so if he can fail at the safe, why not go for the risky?
Yeah, totally. And I also think maybe, I mean, as I said, not to dispute that I agree with that, but I guess what I do with my daughter is I say go for it, but go for it with the idea of 10% more effort in this area, i.e. do a teaching diploma, also gives you a backstop, but go for it. Although there are many people, having just watched one of the Dark Knight Rises, where he has to, the Batman movie against Bane, where he has to make the final jump without the safety rope on, or he doesn't make it. Yeah, there's that philosophy as well. So I don't know.
Well, I don't know. And I think part of it, a lot of it comes back to actually, and you see that just with the snippets of Jim Carrey, is knowing your own integrity, why you do what you do. And there is so much BS around all the time, and that's always a good, a measure when you're working in any field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
As
you're
opposed to saying, I just want to be famous.
Just want to be famous. And look, that feels like quite a nice place to wrap up, if you ask me. People want to know more about you, your writings and stuff.
I thought we were wrapping up.
We are wrapping up. That's what I'm just asking you to wrap up. To wrap up, people want to know, like I noticed on some, if you Google your name on some websites, you can go and check out some of your writings. You can buy them. You can buy, when you buy one of your writings, is that also a license to perform it?
No. So if you say we should go to the Playmarket website, and I think maybe you can purchase a PDF of a script, or one of a version of Eloise is published in a beautiful book of 8. Yeah, you're here now. What was it called?
There you go. Click on Eloise in the middle there, Jace. There you go.
Yeah, this book, which
so that's
it's got 8 plays.
So that's just to purchase it.
That's 8 plays.
And then what happens if someone wants to perform it out of interest?
So usually, if you want to perform anyone's play, you have to apply to license it through their agent.
Right.
Whoever that is. Mine is Playmarket.
Right.
Yeah. So you can't just go putting other people's work on.
Very good.
And that's how playwrights don't make a living, because you don't make a lot of money off that. But yeah,
so
and part of that process is in terms of licensing is the producer who is putting it on is making under what circumstances are they putting on, and coming back to who gets to tell stories and casting is some licensing agreements might have quite clear guidelines around casting or how something is staged. I seem to remember I think it was back in the 90s, there was a production of Waiting for Godot on here in Dunedin, I think at the Globe, and the director had cast a woman in one of the roles, and the Beckett estate essentially had it shut down.
Really?
Yeah.
So like I was about to say, I was lucky enough to interview Richard O'Brien, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Rocky Horror Show, and one of his stipulations is only professional groups ever get the rights to do that show. Right. So you'll never see a school do it.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only because he wants that standard to be always there.
Yeah. And sometimes that's part of the licensing and.
Interesting. So if people want to find out more about you, Googling your name will take you to...
We'll go to Playmarket.
Playmarket's the best place?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I feel like we've come full circle, like you've said.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Jason.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jason.
So that's the end, is it then?
We're finished.
We're finished. Okay.
Yeah. Bye.